The impossible gambit. The tactical displays across the Galactic Diplomatic Station Epsilon 7 erupted in crimson morning lights as 30 Zenthran warships materialized from hyperspace. Their crystalline hulls refracted starlight into prismatic death, each vessel a testament to centuries of refined military doctrine. Admiral Vextor of the Zenthran Confederacy observed the human diplomatic station through his command interface. His forearms moved with practiced precision across holographic controls as tactical data streamed before his compound eyes. The humans had violated the Orion Accords by establishing mining operations in contested space. Today, they would learn the price of defying galactic law. "Station shields at maximum," reported Lieutenant Torres from the Human Command Center. "But sir, we're completely outgunned. 30 capital ships against our 2 patrol vessels and 1 experimental fighter." Commander James Mitchell gripped the edges of his command chair. The station housed 3,000 diplomats, scientists, and civilians from dozens of species. Evacuation was impossible with Zenthran interdiction fields already active. "Launch everything we have," Mitchell ordered. "Buy time for a distress signal to reach the fleet." In the station's fighter bay, Captain Maya Chen secured her helmet and initiated the pre-flight sequence of the Wraith-class interceptor. Her neural implants synchronized with the ship's quantum computer as biometric sensors confirmed her identity. Maya wasn't just any pilot. She was the product of humanity's most ambitious military experiment, Project Prometheus. Her genetics had been carefully modified for enhanced spatial awareness and reaction time. Neural pathways were augmented to process information at speeds that would overwhelm an unmodified human brain. Most importantly, she could interface directly with her ship's systems, becoming one with the machine. "Captain Chen, you are not cleared for launch," the bay officer protested. "That's a prototype. Its weapons aren't even fully tested." Maya's fingers danced across the controls. "Neither am I, Lieutenant. That makes us perfect for each other." The Wraith shot from the launch tube like a silver dart, its experimental drives leaving trails of ionized particles. Maya's consciousness expanded as the neural link deepened, her perception extending through the ship's sensors. She could feel the gravitational currents, taste the electromagnetic spectrum, and sense the quantum fluctuations around her. Admiral Vextor watched the lone human fighter emerge. His mandibles clicked in amusement. A single interceptor. The humans mock us with this gesture. Destroy it. 6 Zenthran destroyers broke formation, their plasma cannons tracking the tiny human vessel. The first barrage should have vaporized the Wraith instantly. Instead, Maya executed a maneuver that defied 3 centuries of established combat doctrine. She didn't dodge. She accelerated directly toward the incoming fire. The Zenthran gunners, trained to anticipate evasive patterns, had calculated firing solutions based on expected human behavior. Their plasma bolts intersected empty space as Maya's Wraith threaded between them, using the enemy's own targeting assumptions against them. "Impossible," whispered Tactical Officer Zek March. "No biological pilot could survive those acceleration forces." Maya felt the G-forces compress her modified physiology, but her enhanced cardiovascular system compensated. Blood flow to her brain remained constant while specialized proteins prevented cellular damage. She was pushing the limits of human engineering, but she was still conscious, still fighting. The Wraith dove beneath the destroyer formation, and Maya spotted her opportunity. The sector contained a field of micro-asteroids, remnants of an ancient collision. Military doctrine advised avoiding such hazards. Maya saw weapons. Her ship's gravitic manipulators, designed for docking procedures, activated at maximum power. Dozens of asteroidal fragments, none larger than a human fist, suddenly accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The makeshift railgun projectiles hammered into the Zenthran vessel's ventral shields. The damage was minimal, but the psychological impact was profound. No species in the Galactic Council had ever weaponized environmental debris mid-combat. The Zenthran formation wavered, commanders uncertain how to respond to tactics outside their training parameters. Maya capitalized on their hesitation. The Wraith's experimental systems included a quantum entanglement communicator, a device intended for instantaneous communication across vast distances. But Maya had discovered another application during testing. She activated the quantum field generator, not to send a message, but to create localized space-time distortions. The effect was subtle, microscopic fluctuations in the fabric of reality itself. To the Zenthran sensors, it appeared as if multiple versions of the Wraith existed simultaneously in different locations. Multiple contacts, reported a confused Zenthran sensor officer. The human vessel is everywhere. Admiral Vextor's compound eyes narrowed. Sensor malfunction. Concentrate fire on the strongest signal. But Maya was rewriting the rules of engagement. She guided her ship through a spiral pattern that exploited the quantum uncertainty she had created. The Zenthran targeting computers, designed for precise calculations, couldn't process the deliberate ambiguity she introduced into their data streams. The Wraith danced between dimensions, existing in quantum superposition. Maya's consciousness expanded beyond normal human limits as she navigated probability waves. She wasn't just flying her ship, she was conducting the symphony of uncertainty. 3 Zenthran vessels collided as their automated collision avoidance systems malfunctioned, unable to determine the Wraith's actual position. Explosion cascaded through space as their antimatter containment fields destabilized. Retreat to safe distance, Vextor commanded, his voice betraying the first hints of uncertainty. Regroup and reassess. As the Zenthran formation pulled back, Maya detected something unusual. The enemy's movement patterns followed strict geometric principles, perfect formations that maximized overlapping fields of fire. It was beautiful, efficient, and completely predictable. She accessed the station's xenobiology database through her neural link. Zenthran psychology was built on mathematical harmony. Their entire culture revolved around pattern recognition and symmetric beauty. Their military doctrine reflected this obsession with order. Maya smiled within her helmet. Humans had spent their entire evolutionary history as pattern breakers, as agents of creative chaos. She was about to teach the galaxy why that made them dangerous. The Wraith's experimental drive core could generate a controlled quantum cascade, essentially a localized reality storm. It was untested, potentially unstable, and exactly what she needed. Station Epsilon 7. This is Wraith 1. Maya transmitted. Initiating Cascade Protocol. Suggest you polarize shields and prepare for gravimetric distortions. Commander Mitchell watched his tactical display in amazement. The lone human fighter was drawing the entire Zenthran fleet away from the station. Captain Chen, what are you doing? Improvising, sir. It's a human specialty. Maya activated the cascade generator. Reality rippled around the Wraith as quantum fields destabilized. The neat, ordered universe that Zenthran minds required began to fracture. Their sensors showed impossible readings, gravity flowing backward, time moving in loops, space folding in on itself. The Zenthran fleet's perfect formation dissolved as ships maneuvered frantically to avoid the expanding anomaly. Their coordinated fire patterns collapsed. For the first time in their military history, the Zenthran battle group was in complete disorder. Maya pushed deeper into the quantum storm she had created. Her enhanced neurons fired at superhuman speeds as she processed probability calculations that would have burned out an unmodified brain. She wasn't fighting 30 ships anymore. She was fighting their assumptions, their doctrine, their fundamental understanding of how space combat worked. The Wraith emerged from the cascade effect behind the Zenthran flagship. Its quantum wake had left a trail of confused, disoriented vessels struggling to reestablish formation. Maya had one chance to end this before they recovered. She targeted the flagship's command pod with her experimental weapon, a focused graviton beam that could theoretically create a localized black hole. The power requirements were enormous. The Wraith's reactor would burn out after a single shot. For humanity, Maya whispered and fired, rewriting the rules. The graviton beam lanced out from the Wraith, a spear of impossible darkness that seemed to drink in the light of nearby stars. Admiral Vextor watched in horror as space itself twisted around his flagship. His tactical officers scrambled to respond, but their training had never covered this scenario. How do you fight someone who weaponizes the fundamental forces of reality? The localized singularity Maya created was tiny, less than a millimeter across, but its gravitational effects were devastating. The Zenthran flagship's nose section crumpled inward like paper as tidal forces exceeded the molecular bonds of its crystalline armor. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, but the cascade of structural failures was unstoppable. Impossible. Vextor gasped, his four arms working frantically to stabilize his dying ship. The energy requirements, the containment systems needed. How? Maya felt the Wraith's reactor approaching critical failure. The graviton weapon had consumed nearly all her power reserves. Her neural links screamed warnings as systems began shutting down. But she wasn't finished. The chaos she had sown was just beginning to bloom. The Zenthran fleet, witnessing their flagship being consumed by an artificial black hole, fell into complete disarray. Their rigid command structure, built on absolute hierarchy and mathematical precision, shattered. Individual captains began making independent decisions, something antithetical to Zenthran military doctrine. Some ships retreated. Others pressed the attack. A few simply froze, their commanders paralyzed by the collapse of everything they understood about warfare. Maya had targeted more than just their flagship. She had attacked the psychological foundations of their entire military philosophy. The quantum cascade she had initiated earlier continued to propagate. Like ripples in a pond, reality distortions spread through the battle space. Zenthran targeting computers, calibrated for a stable universe, couldn't adapt to the fluctuating spacetime Maya had created. All units fall back to minimum safe distance, Second Commander Kexville ordered, trying to restore some semblance of order. Re-establish formation at coordinates. His transmission cut off as another impossible phenomenon manifested. Maya had discovered something during her wild flight through quantum space. The Zenthran ships were linked by a battle network that synchronized their actions. It was their greatest strength, allowing perfect coordination. She had turned it into a weakness. The Wraith's communication array, modified during her desperate innovation, broadcast a quantum virus into the Zenthran network. Not malicious code in the traditional sense, but patterns of quantum uncertainty that propagated through their systems like infection. Ship after ship began experiencing sensor hallucinations, their computers unable to distinguish between real targets and quantum ghosts. Two Zenthran cruisers fired on each other, each convinced they were engaging the human fighter. Another vessel's navigation system insisted it was flying through solid matter and initiated emergency evasive maneuvers that sent it careening into its wingman. Maya watched the elegant alien formation dissolve into chaos. Her own systems were failing. The Wraith's experimental technologies pushed far beyond their design limits. But she had accomplished something unprecedented. A single pilot had psychologically broken an entire fleet. Station Epsilon 7, Wraith 1. She transmitted through failing communication systems. Recommend immediate diplomatic overture. Enemy fleet combat effectiveness critically compromised. Commander Mitchell stared at his tactical display in amazement. The mighty Zenthran armada was in full retreat, half their vessels damaged or destroyed, the rest fleeing in disorder. Captain Chen, how? What did you do? I showed them something they couldn't understand, sir. Chaos. Improvisation. The human gift for making impossible things work. The Wraith's engines finally died, leaving Maya drifting in space. Her life support was failing, reactor containment dropping to critical levels. She had perhaps minutes before the ship became uninhabitable, but she smiled, watching the last Zenthran vessels disappear into hyperspace. A human rescue shuttle was already launching from the station. As Maya waited for pickup, she reflected on what had just happened. The galaxy's military powers had spent millennia refining their doctrines, their technologies, their understanding of warfare. They had created perfect systems, unbeatable strategies, insurmountable advantages. They had never accounted for humanity's gift for creative destruction, for their willingness to break every rule, violate every assumption, and turn their own limitations into weapons. 3 days later, in the ruins of the Zenthran Fleet Command, Admiral Vextor submitted his report to the Confederacy's High Council. His 4 hands trembled as he described the battle, the impossible maneuvers, the weaponization of fundamental forces that should have been beyond any species' capability. "The humans don't fight like us," he concluded. "They don't follow rules. They create them, break them, and create new ones in the midst of battle. Our entire doctrine is based on predictable responses to known threats. They presented unknown threats and unpredictable responses. We were not just outfought. We were outthought." The High Council listened in silence. Around the galaxy, other military powers studied the battle recordings with growing unease. The engagement at Epsilon 7 hadn't just been a human victory. It had been a paradigm shift. Within months, military academies across the galaxy began teaching what became known as the Chen Doctrine, the principle that in warfare, the greatest weapon was not superior firepower or technology, but the ability to think beyond established parameters. Human pilots became the most sought-after mercenaries in known space, not because they were better trained or had superior reflexes, but because they could do something no other species could reliably replicate. They could innovate in real time, turning disadvantages into advantages, using the enemy's own strengths against them. Maya Chen recovered fully from her ordeal and was promoted to wing commander. She established humanity's first academy of adaptive combat, where pilots learn not just how to fly and fight, but how to think beyond the possible. Years later, when asked about the battle that changed everything, Maya would say, "The Zenthrans had perfect ships, perfect formations, perfect tactics. We had something better, the perfectly human ability to make imperfect solutions work perfectly." The Galactic Council eventually amended their military engagement protocols to account for what they termed human unpredictability factor. It was a diplomatic way of admitting that humanity had forever changed the nature of space warfare by introducing something that no amount of technology or training could counter: pure, creative chaos. The Zenthran Confederacy never again challenged human space, not out of fear of human weapons, but out of respect for human minds. They had learned, at terrible cost, that in a universe where every other species fought by the rules, humans won by rewriting them. In the annals of galactic history, the Battle of Epsilon 7 stood as a turning point. Not because of the scale of the conflict. Larger battles had been fought and won. Not because of the technology employed. More advanced weapons existed. But because one human pilot had demonstrated that the greatest strength of humanity was not what they could build or destroy, but how they could think. The age of predictable warfare was over. The age of human chaos had begun. And across the galaxy, military strategists of 100 species spent sleepless nights pondering the same question. How do you fight an enemy that treats the impossible as merely another challenge to overcome? The answer, as Maya Chen had proved, was simple. You don't. You adapt, you learn, and you hope that humanity considers you an ally rather than an obstacle. In space, as on Earth, humans had once again proved that their greatest evolutionary advantage wasn't their tools or their bodies. It was their infinite capacity to imagine solutions that shouldn't work, and then make them work anyway. The laws of space combat would never be the same.